3 spine-chilling true tales of cursed abandoned buildings. Sinister secrets exposed. Sarah had finally done it. After months of searching, she found the perfect house in the charming town of Willow Creek, Ohio. The streets were lined with perfectly manicured lawns, picturesque homes, and kids who seemed to play without a care in the world. But what lay beneath the surface was a layer of darkness that would soon begin to claw at her peaceful life. She didn't notice it at first, but the abandoned school looming at the end of the block whispered secrets that would soon echo through her dreams. It began with Lily's nightmares. The first night in their new home, Sarah was jolted from sleep by her daughter's terrified cries. "Mommy, the monster! It's in the school!" Panic gripped Sarah's heart as she rushed to Lily's side, shaking off the heaviness of her own fatigue. "It's just a dream, sweetheart," she soothed, but knowing then that something sinister lingered at the edge of their perfect life. Ben, catching his sister's fear, merely shook his head and mumbled about shadows and whispers that danced in the corners of his own nightmares. The days unfolded lazily, but as Sarah settled into her role as a single mother in this brightly painted facade of suburbia, she started to notice strange things. Shadows flitted past her kitchen window, and neighbors exchanged furtive glances that felt more like warnings than hello. Why did the wind moan like a lost child through the cracked windows of the abandoned church just 2 blocks away? And why did the townsfolk steer clear of the old school, whispering, "It's best you don't go there"? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One afternoon, as she walked alongside Ben and Lily, the air thickened. A sentinel of despair loomed into view, the old school, a forgotten relic of laughter and learning now steeped in neglect. The cracked surfaces of its brick walls seemed to hold stories of families who had vanished without a trace. And that sign, Mayor Thompson, the visionary behind our bright future, felt like a slap in the face. It had been years since he mysteriously disappeared after the school shuttered, and Sarah felt her skin prickle with unease. That night, dread gnawed at her like a savage beast. She lay awake, straining to hear her children's soft breathing, only to be interrupted by Ben's cries again. The monster, the whispers. He was frightened, his face pale and fretful. How could she ignore their fear when it matched her own creeping anxiety? The peaceful dream she envisioned for her family began to fracture, revealing jagged edges of truth and looming danger. It was then she knew she had to dig deeper. The town's past was stitched together with long-buried tragedies, and as she found unsettling echoes of betrayal lurking in every friendly smile, her heart raced. Willow Creek wasn't just a new beginning. It threatened to swallow her whole. The whispering shadows were looming closer, and Sarah knew she had to uncover the secrets lurking just out of view. The night painted itself in shades of chaos as her children's laughter echoed from the schoolyard, a sweet melody turning sour in her mind. Who were they playing with? What dark history awaited her, creeping ever closer? She feared the answers she might find, yet the urge to protect her children pushed her forward into the darkness that gathered outside their door. The next morning, Sarah awoke with the sun streaming through the curtains, but found no warmth in its glow. A chill seemed to cling to her skin, a remnant of the nightmares that had invaded her family's peace. The memories of Lily and Ben's trembling voices haunted her, urging her to act. With dread pooling in her stomach, Sarah made her way into the kitchen, brewing coffee while her thoughts turned back to the old schoolhouse. As she stirred the pot, the shadows flitted against the walls, making her hesitate, realizing for the first time that the uncanny stillness of the town felt unnatural. She couldn't shake feeling like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting, just like her. Perhaps it was time to confront the unknown. That afternoon, while the kids played in the yard, she slipped away to investigate the school. The crisp fall air pinched at her cheeks as she approached, and the once vibrant structure appeared even more forlorn up close. The windows were boarded, dark holes resembling eyes that had long given up on seeing the light. Once vibrant colors were now muted and faded, the former glory fading into decay. At the front door, she paused, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm. With a shaky hand, she pushed on the splintered wood. It creaked loudly, almost as if it were protesting her entry. But something drew her in, an unseen force compelling her to shove the door wider and slip inside. The air was stale, the smell of mildew overwhelming. Sunlight tried to penetrate the gloom through cracks in the walls, revealing forgotten desks coated in dust, long-abandoned art supplies, and faded posters that once inspired the youth. Her breath caught in her throat as she reveled in the eerie silence. Each creak of the floorboards was magnified, echoing the fear that thrummed in her veins. Suddenly, she felt a presence watching her. Goosebumps erupted along her arms, and the hairs on her neck prickled. "Hello?" she called, her voice sounding weak against the empty halls. No response came except the wind whistling through the broken windows, carrying with it the faintest whisper of laughter. Was it distant echoes, or something more sinister? Steeling herself, she pushed deeper into the building, glancing at each doorway, each classroom a time capsule of sorrow. Her heart raced, the tendrils of fear creeping up her spine. Just past the art room, she caught sight of something, a flicker of movement. She strained her eyes, trying to find its source, but nothing appeared, only shadows that twisted and turned in the dim light. As she made her way toward the gymnasium, a sudden roar of laughter jolted her from her thoughts. It was clearly children's laughter, ringing melodically, yet it felt wrong, taunting, inviting. Fear spiraled within her, and she felt the urge to run, but something held her rooted in place. The laughter morphed into whispers, chilling her to the bone. "Help us, stay with us." It was then she noticed the walls, covered in scrawled messages that sent horror crashing through her like a tidal wave. "Don't go to the light," one read. "We're trapped," another warned. She stumbled backward, the laughter intensifying, merging with cries that echoed through the hallways. Panic surged as she turned to escape, and in that moment, the air thickened, becoming almost tangible. Shadows danced around her like phantoms, reaching, twisting, eager to ensnare her in their dark embrace. She ran, heart slamming against her ribs, desperate to escape the grip of the cursed building. Finally bursting through the front door into the daylight, Sarah stumbled onto the grass, gasping for air. The bright sun seemed to pierce through her fog of dread, but she knew she couldn't return to that place without answers. But what secrets lay hidden within its walls? And who were those children calling out for help? The shadows over Willow Creek were growing, and she felt their pull not just in the school, but in her own home. As night fell, she sensed a change, an impending darkness. She had awakened something that might not rest until it had grasped her family into its shadowy clutches. Was she strong enough to uncover the truth, or would the cursed school finally claim her? That night, Sarah barely slept. Each creak of the house felt like a whisper, urging her to listen to understand what she had stumbled upon. Shadows danced across the walls of her bedroom, flickering like insects. With every rustle, her heart pounded louder, drowning out the sounds of the night. What had she unleashed? When dawn broke, her determination hardened into steel. The schoolhouse held answers. She could not ignore the cries that haunted her. As she stepped outside, the air was heavy with a sense of foreboding. The world around her felt too quiet, too still. She glanced toward the school, the dark structure looming like an apparition against the morning sky. Steeling herself with a deep breath, she set out again. Each step sent tremors through her body, an instinctual warning that the danger was far from over. The closer she got, the more she could sense the oppressive weight of the building's history. It was like an ancient beast watching her, filled with secrets waiting to be unearthed. The door swung open to her touch, a cracking sound that split the silence. This time she stepped inside with a purpose. Shadows clung to her, wrapping around her as she traversed the familiar halls. The laughter returned, louder and more frenzied, dancing around her like a taunt. "Stay with us." The feeling of being watched intensified as she moved deeper. Every classroom she had once felt helpless in now held her with accusations. Her palms were clammy, heart racing as she approached the gymnasium, where she had heard the laughter before. She had to face this fear. The gym was even darker, sunbeams struggling to filter through the grime-smeared windows. But it wasn't empty. In the center, children were gathered, small figures cloaked in shadow, their faces obscured, but their expressions clear. Desperation mixed with that dark allure of joy. "Join us," they called, their voices harmonizing in a horrid melody. "There's no pain here, only play." Instinct kicked in, and her body reacted before her mind had caught up. "I can't," she yelled, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. "I want to help you." At that, a shift occurred. The children froze, their laughter fading into an eerie silence that felt like a vacuum sucking the air from her lungs. And then the whispers returned. "Help us," they echoed, and the children turned their heads slowly, their movements unnatural, like marionettes on frayed strings. An icy hand crept up her spine. The laughter metamorphosed into wails, raw and filled with anguish. An unseen force pushed her back, compelling her to flee. The walls seemed to close in. She stumbled against a desk, gasping as despair washed over her like a tide. What were they? What had happened to them? As she rushed toward the exit, a flicker of recognition hit her like a slap. One child at the forefront, face momentarily illuminated by the sunlight breaking through, looked eerily familiar. A reflection from the past, a lost face she thought she would never see again. When she blinked, the figure vanished, her heart plummeting into an abyss of dread. She pushed through the door and burst into the open air, but it wasn't enough. Her mind raced with possibilities. Had she seen Lily? Was that even possible? In a panic, she stumbled back home, the ominous urge of the school trailing her like a shadow. The whispers grew louder in her mind, refusing to let her forget. Trapped children and one soul that felt heartbreakingly close. Back at her house, Sarah felt the walls close in once more. As she glanced at the mirror, her reflection seemed off, the shadow behind her appearing longer, stretching as if reaching for her. What was waiting for her in the darkness? Who else might be trapped in the echoes of that terrible place? In that moment, a sudden crash erupted from the basement, reverberating through her chest and pulling her toward the unknown. She hesitated, dread coiling tightly around her heart. What lay beneath her feet? With one last, shaky breath, she could only wonder. Was she ready to face whatever dwelled in the dark, or would she find herself joining those lost souls? The crash echoed again, louder this time, like a thunderclap in an empty room. It rattled the glass in the frames on the walls, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. Instinctively, she backed away, heart hammering in her chest. The basement door oscillated slightly, almost teasing her with its half-closed state. Her hand trembled as it hovered above the doorknob. What lay down there? Whatever it was, it felt alive, hungry. She breathed in sharply, trying to summon courage from the pit of her stomach. "Lily," she whispered, the name of fragile hope in the oppressive silence. The only answer was a low, hesitant creak from below, as if something of great weight shifted in the shadows. Sarah's heart pounded uncontrollably. She clenched her jaw and gripped the knob with determination, twisting it slowly until the door swung open, revealing nothing but darkness. A chill swept through her as she stepped into the space beyond, the basement air thick and stale. The single bulb above flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to slither along the walls. Each step was labored, the wooden stairs groaning ominously under her weight. She felt every creak resonate deep within, a warning cry she chose to ignore. As Sarah descended, the whispers intensified, swirling in a chaotic cacophony. "Help us, find us." It was as if the very walls held memories of the lost, echoing their despair through time. Once on the basement floor, she paused, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. The unsettling quiet felt like a thick blanket pressing down on her. She noticed scattered toys, broken dolls with vacant eyes, a rusted tricycle propped against a wall. Each item seemed to have a story trapped inside it, a remnant of innocent laughter now swallowed by the shadows. And then she heard it again, soft, pained whimpering, coming from somewhere deeper inside the basement. Fear knotted in her stomach, but she pressed forward. "Hello? Is someone there?" Her voice trembled. The whimpering stopped. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then, the sound of something dragging across the floor sharply pierced the stillness. Her breath caught in her throat. She strained her ears and felt drawn toward an unlit corner of the room behind a stack of old boxes. She crouched down, fingers trembling as she parted the boxes. There, hidden in the dark, she found a wooden chest, scuffed and ancient. It seemed to pulse with energy, both inviting and forbidding. Before she could touch it, a chill swept through the basement, wrapping around her like icy tendrils. The whispers erupted into a frenzied chorus. "Open it! Open it!" Each word was a plea, a demand, and a warning all at once. Anxiety surged within her. What was in the box? Suddenly, the air crackled around her, and shadows slithered from the corners, forming vague shapes that twisted and morphed. Panic seized her, and she stumbled back, heart racing as the darkness seemed to come alive. She clutched the edges of the box, fear choking her breath. "Sarah," a soft voice floated from within the chest. Her blood ran cold. It was Lily's voice, familiar yet distant, woven with the sorrow of despair. "Help me!" Gasping, she yanked the lid open, and the room erupted into chaos. A blinding light surged forth, flooding the basement with an unbearable brightness. The whispers turned into anguished screams, and then the light snuffed out. In an instant, all was dark again, but something was different. She felt the presence around her more intensely than ever before, watchful, desperate, and infinitesimally close. "Sarah," the voice echoed again, clearer this time, but now it carried an undercurrent of warning. What had she done? Before she could comprehend, unseen hands grabbed at her from the shadows, pulling her into the depths of their torment, wrestling for her very soul. With one final cry, she felt the brutal grip of darkness embrace her. What had she awakened? Who else lurked in the shadows, hungry for release? The weight of darkness pressed down on Sarah like a thick fog, suffocating her screams and turning her world into a surreal nightmare. She flailed, grappling with invisible hands that clawed at her, tugging her further into the void. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribcage as she fought against the icy tendrils encasing her. "Let me go!" she shouted, desperation ripping through her voice. But the shadows only tightened their grip, drawing her closer to the ancient chest, now ominously beckoning from afar. The basement pulsed with energy, an electric hum resonated through the air, and the whispers climbed higher, frenzied and insistent. "Join us! Join us!" they cried, a million voices echoing from the walls, dripped in sorrow and rage. Sarah's lungs burned as she gasped for air. She clawed at whatever was holding her, scratching against the damp ground, but the dark only consumed her further. She thought of Lily, her sister, lost somewhere in this hell, and fought harder. "Lily, where are you?" Her eyes darted around the blackness, seeing nothing but shadows and despair. It was then that she heard it, a faint flicker of a laugh, hollow and echoing through the shadows, mingling with the whispers. "Sarah, you shouldn't have opened it." The voice curled around her, chilling her to the bone. Suddenly, the unseen force loosened just enough for her to stumble forward. She crashed to the floor, gasping in a desperate attempt to reclaim her freedom. The shadows receded momentarily, allowing a sliver of hope to crack through. The basement doorway was only a few paces away, a sliver of light shimmering tantalizingly. With renewed determination, she scrambled to her feet, not caring about the sharp edges of the debris cutting into her palms and knees. Each step was a battle, the darkness thrumming like a beast behind her, angry and ravenous. As she reached the door, a sharp pain seized her ankle, nearly sending her sprawling again. Looking down, Sarah gasped. A shadowy form, an indistinguishable face twisted in agony, reached out from the depths, fingers curling desperate and claw-like. It pulled at her, yearning to snatch her back into its torment. "Help us, you must join us," the voice hissed, low and guttural, echoing all around her, wrapping around her mind like a vice. "No!" she screamed, yanking her leg free, the energy shifting as she narrowly escaped its grasp. The basement door, an unending portal to darkness, stood ajar ahead. "Lily!" she called again, more frantically this time. What had she awoken? Images of her sister filled her mind, laughter and warmth, a sharp contrast to the cold void surrounding her. Just as she made a break for the door, the whispers erupted into a cacophony, a tide of voices crashing against her, threatening to drag her down. "Stay, stay, stay," they cried, laced with malice and deception. Blind terror fueled her. She slammed through the door, flinging herself into the hallway beyond, lungs heaving. The basement door slammed shut behind her with a bone-rattling thud, locking the terror within. She pressed her back against it, eyes wide, panting for breath. But an unsettling calm cloaked her. The air felt different, denser. The whispers receded, replaced by an ominous silence. Sarah Lily's voice floated through the air again. Not from the basement, but from beside her. Turning, her heart sank. There, standing at the end of the hallway, was a figure cloaked in shadows, a eerily familiar silhouette. Just out of reach, it beckoned her closer, an undeniable pull that threatened to unravel her. "Help me," it was Lily's voice, but those eyes glittered with a strange darkness. "What have you become?" Sarah stuttered as they locked gazes, the truth lurking just beneath their surface. "Come closer. You need to see," the figure urged, stretching out its hand, inviting her into the unknown. The hair on Sarah's neck stood on end. What truth awaited her? What horrors had she unleashed? And could she save her sister, or was it already too late? The darkness quivered around her, hungry for her decision. Does she take that step forward, or does she flee deeper into the abyss? The answer could determine their fate and the very balance of light and dark. Fear snaked its way through Sarah as she stood frozen. The corridor felt endless, drawing her towards her sister's twisted figure. But something deep inside screamed to turn back. "Lily," she whispered, the word barely escaping her trembling lips. The shadowy figure tilted its head, an eerie smile forming as if savoring her torment. "Is that really you?" "Of course it's me," Lily replied, the familiarity of her voice striking a chord in Sarah's chest. Yet, the emptiness woven into those words sent chills down her spine, reverberating in the silence. "You have to trust me. I'm waiting for you." A sharp pain shot through Sarah's chest, a mixture of longing and dread. It was the same warmth she felt as a child longing to reach out, to bridge the gap. But who was the reflection standing in front of her? What remained of her sister inside that shadowy shell? "Stay back." Panic spilled from her, pushing against the stifling air. "You're not my sister. Find her." With newfound resolve, Sarah turned away, feeling the shadows coil tighter around her. Each step felt like an eternity as she ran, the whispers flaring up like a storm. "Join us! Join the darkness!" they shrieked, each syllable striking her back like daggers. The hallway twisted and warped, its walls bending in unnatural angles as if the whole house was alive and malevolent, conspiring against her escape. The light dimmed with every frantic rush, air thickening like molasses. Shadows pooled like water around her feet, eager to drown her in their depths. "Sarah." Lily's voice echoed again, deeper and more distorted, crawling along her skin. "You can't run forever." Her breath came in shallow gasps, the world around her blurring. She stumbled into the next room, the door swinging shut behind her with a deafening bang. Heart racing, she pressed her palms against the cool wood, praying for a moment of respite. But the air crackled with energy, pulsating as if anticipating something dreadful. Looking around, she realized where she was an old study, once filled with books, and the scent of ink now turned to mildew. Dust motes danced in the dim light filtering from a grimy window, a relic of forgotten days. But that wasn't what caught her attention. A mirror stood at the far wall, large and imposing, reflecting her pale face staring back. Seeing it felt wrong, as if the reflection was waiting for her to step closer. Fearing the pull of her own image, she squinted in the dim light and saw something shift just behind her. A wave of darkness slithering across the floor. She turned sharply, the room empty, yet she could feel it, the eyes watching. "Come back," the whispers echoed again, wrapping tight around her mind like a choking vine. "Lily needs you." The mirror beckoned her closer, glimmers of movement within its glass. A flicker of something. Was it a motion? An image? No, several faces, twisting in anguish. Were these the lost souls from the basement? No, she screamed, jolting back, pulling herself away from the horrifying reflection. That was a choice she could not make. Behind her, the door rattled violently. "Let her in." The pleading voices screamed in unison. "You are one of us." The force against the door grew stronger, shadows pooling at the threshold like a living tide. Sarah pressed her back against the mirror, her eyes wide. What could she do? Instantly moving could risk everything. Staying could end everything. She swallowed hard. Would she sacrifice herself to save Lily, or would she succumb to the darkness feeding off their fears? The door splintered, a crack forming as shadows clawed to get inside. The whispers crescendoed, drowning out all rational thought. Make your choice now. What would be her final act? Preservation or destruction? Desperation clawed at her throat, leaving her no time to think about the consequences. The shadows screamed for release as light and dark danced at the edge of her mind. Would she stay and face the truth, or take the plunge into the unknown? As the door burst open, a wave of darkness flooded the room, pulling her in with a haunting answer. Would she become a part of the terror she feared, or somehow reclaim what was lost? Time was running out. The darkness rushed in, swallowing Sarah whole. She felt herself being tugged, pulled towards the mirror as if it had come alive. The surface shimmered, not like glass but a living thing. The grip of dread wrapped around her heart, squeezing tighter. Suddenly, a scream cut through the chaos. It wasn't just the shadows whispering. Now she could hear an unmistakable voice. "Help me, please." It was Lily, and the desperation in her words ignited a flame of determination in Sarah's chest. "Lily," she called, though her voice was thin, almost drowned by the thick, invasive darkness. "I'm coming." She pushed against the encroaching shadows, the force against her growing stronger. With every ounce of strength, she lunged towards the mirror. Time warped as she reached out. As her fingers brushed against the cold surface, the world around her twisted and spun. In a blink, she was not in the study anymore. Light flooded her senses and she stumbled forward, falling onto a cold, damp floor. Staring at her surroundings, the confusion swirled like mist. She was in a dimly lit basement, the walls lined with rusted pipes and old stones. The air was thick and musty, filled with the scent of decay. She was alone, or was she? Lily? Panic gnawed at her again. She got to her feet, scanning the darkness. There were low moans coming from somewhere nearby, faint, like echoes of lost souls. Without thinking, Sarah moved tentatively toward the sound, every step echoing like a heartbeat. Shadows clung to the corners, half-formed shapes that seemed alive, watching. She could feel their eyes on her, watching and waiting. Her pulse quickened. "Where are you, Lily?" She called out once more, desperation creeping into her tone. As her voice faded away, silence returned, thick and oppressive. Then she heard it again. A whimper, closer this time. Sarah, it was barely a whisper, but she recognized it, her sister's voice. "Lily," she cried, racing towards the sound. The walls seemed to close in on her, sucking the breath from her lungs. Shadows flickered around her ankles, tendrils reaching out, trying to siphon her strength away. "Help me, please." The plea was more urgent now, tinged with fear that made Sarah's heart race. She stumbled into a small room, barely lit by a flickering bulb above. Her eyes adjusted and she gasped. In front of her, bound by thick chains, was Lily. Her sister's eyes were wide with terror, but they were not the bright, playful eyes Sarah remembered. They reflected something darker, an emptiness that twisted Sarah's gut. "Get me out of here," Lily screamed. "They want tea, let me go." In that moment, Sarah saw the chains glimmering ominously. They pulsed with a dreadful energy, dark and twisted. Shadows coiled around them like snakes, keeping Lily trapped. Who? What is this? Sarah could barely manage to ask, her voice faltering under the weight of the nightmare. The shadows, they're part of the house. They feed on fear. They're feeding on me. Something shifted again, a low rumble vibrating through the floor. The shadows reacted, hissing as they retreated from the chains momentarily. Sarah felt the shift of power, and seizing the moment, she rushed to her sister, hands trembling as she fumbled for the locks. "Let go of me!" Lily screamed again, thrashing against the chains, her voice turning into a shriek as shadows pushed back, clawing at Sarah's skin, whispering promises of despair. "Hold on!" Sarah shouted, yanking desperately at the metal shackles. The friction burned her skin, a harsh reminder of her own vulnerability. The walls seemed to lighten for a fleeting second, the shadows withdrawing just enough for Sarah to feel glimmers of hope. But darkness was relentless. It surged forward, hissing. "Sarah, they're coming!" Lily cried out, her expression shifting from pleading to one of knowing dread. In a surge of determination fueled by fear and love, Sarah braced herself against the fierce pull. "I won't let them take you." But as the last lock clicked open, a thunderous roar echoed around them, shattering the false calm and sending a wave of shadows crashing into the room like an angry tide. They were back. Would Sarah's courage be enough to break the darkness's hold? Or would the chains tighten around both of them, dragging them into the nightmare forever? As shadows enveloped her again, the question hung in the air: what would rise from the terrifying depths? The shadows rushed in, enveloping Sarah's vision in a swirling vortex of darkness. Panic gripped her throat as she barely managed to pull Lily free. The moment the last chain fell away, a shrill wail echoed through the room, a perfect mixture of fear and rage. The walls trembled, and the oppressive darkness surged forward, slashing at her legs like a pack of wild animals. "Run!" Sarah gasped, but the words barely escaped her lips as she felt a coldness wrap around her ankle. The chains that had bound her sister slithered like snakes, trying to reclaim their prey. "Sarah, don't leave me!" Lily cried, scrambling to her feet. Her eyes glistened with tears, deep wells of fear and confusion. "Grab my hand!" Sarah shouted, lunging towards her. But the moment was interrupted. The shadows hissed, a sinister chorus that seemed to reconstruct the very air around them. In her peripheral vision, movement. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in black, its face obscured. It extended a long finger, every joint creaking like a rusty hinge. "You shouldn't have done that," it murmured, its voice echoing, as if stemming from somewhere deep within the house. "What do you want?" Sarah screamed, gripping Lily's hand tighter. The figure tilted its head, and for the first time, Sarah felt the weight of its gaze. She felt a cold dread washing over her, chilling her bones. "Your fear nourishes us, and now you will join her," it hissed, gesturing wickedly toward Lily. Lily shook her head violently, an animal caught in a trap. "No, I'm not afraid. I won't be afraid." Her defiance sent a ripple through the shadows, causing them to recoil, but the figure laughed, an eerie sound that reverberated in the confined space. It was a laugh of absolute malice. "Fear is a feast, dear one, and you are its main course." Suddenly, shadows thickened around Lily, wrapping the chains like cobwebs. She gasped as they constricted, squeezing her lungs. "Sarah, please, hold on." Sarah pleaded, her heart crashing against her ribcage. She tried to pull her sister to her, but a wall of darkness blocked her way. Fragments of despair sliced through her resolve, echoing fears of losing Lily forever. With every ounce of strength, Sarah thrust herself against the wall of darkness, hands outstretched. "You can't have her." The figure's laugh stopped abruptly. The shadows screeched around them, an angry wind that began to swirl, picking up speed. "Then face the consequences." With a shriek, the shadows seized Sarah, dragging her away from Lily's desperate grasp. The energy pulsed wildly, each tendril filled with a bitter chill. "Fight it!" She screamed, her voice a haunting echo fading into the void. Lily cried out, the sound splintering Sarah's heart. She could barely breathe as shadows tried to snuff out the light inside her. But in that moment of overwhelming darkness, something flickered in Sarah's mind, an image of home, laughter, and love. Could it counter the gnawing terror consuming her? Grasping that fleeting hope, Sarah stood tall against the shadows. I will not give in. The darkness hesitated, swirling like a tempest. She could feel it straining against her defiance. Would the power of her love be enough to break the chains of terror? As she pushed forward, a voice whispered through the chaos. You cannot win. The house will never let you go despite the fear creeping back in. She refused to succumb, refusing to abandon Lily. What lay ahead was uncertain. But behind her, Lily cried, fight, please. The shadows twitched as Sarah faced them down, and the figure watching in disbelief. Would love be enough to sever the darkness's grip? Or was the house truly insatiable, drawing them both into its cursed fold? The shadows writhed, a tangled mess of hopelessness, but just as quickly, they lunged again. Desperation hung heavy in the air. The walls pulsed, echoing a new, more terrifying question: what would it take to escape this nightmare once and for all? Sarah's heart raced. The shadows coiled tighter, their icy tendrils squeezing the last remnants of hope from her chest. Lily, she cried, but the name got lost in the darkness, swallowed by the hatred of the entity lurking just beyond her sight. The figure loomed closer, every warped movement a grotesque mockery of a human form. Your love is nothing against the shadows, it rasped, words dripping with disdain. The chains slithered towards Sarah like predatory snakes, their coldness biting into her skin. With every step backward, she felt the binding darkness creeping ever closer, savoring the fear in the air. No, Sarah shouted, her voice piercing the heavy fog of despair. With a surge of sheer determination, she turned and slammed her shoulder against the wall of darkness. It felt like ramming into a brick fortress, but she couldn't stop now. Lily, hold on. I'm trying. Lily whimpered, each word choked with panic. It's pulling me down. Visualize home. Remember us. Sarah shouted as she pushed against the encroaching shadows, focusing on those fleeting memories: the sunlit yard, laughter echoing like music, their mom's warm smile. The shadows faltered, momentarily confused by the resistance, and the energy shifted. Stop her, the figure shrieked, face now twisted in anger. Suddenly, the shadows surged back, angry waves crashing against Sarah like a storm. She gasped, feeling its grip around her lungs, tightening, squeezing the air from her chest. Against the pain, she fought, desperate for a lifeline. Lily, come on. Just a little more. I can't breathe. Lily cried out, the shadows tightening like a noose. Fear drenched her words, the darkness soaking up her defiance. In that instant, something snapped within Sarah, an aching sense of clarity. If love was the key, fear could be a weapon too. Every nerve was alive, every instinct screaming. You want fear? She yelled, raw strength coursing through her. Then feast on this. With every ounce of adrenaline pumping through her veins, she unleashed a primal scream, transforming dread into fury. It was a sound filled with every ounce of love she had for her sister, every moment that made their bond unbreakable. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agony as they pulled away, and for a heart-stopping second, the tunnel of darkness shattered. A glimmer of light cracked through, illuminating the room in a harsh, white glow. Sarah turned to Lily, praying to see her sister freed, but instead, horror seized her. Lily was still trapped, chains coiling tighter as the shadows hissed in rage. The light flickered like a dying flame, and the figure, now unmasked, grinned wickedly. You think love can save you? You will become a part of the darkness. Gritting her teeth, Sarah glanced around, searching for anything: a weapon, a clue, a sign that they could escape. Instead, panic swelled, chilling her. The once reassuring room was warping, walls bending like they were breathing in sync with the darkness. Flashes of ethereal faces emerged from the walls, eyes full of despair, whispers of forgotten souls calling for help. "Join us," they murmured, voices a haunting lullaby. "No." Sarah shook her head, heart pounding against the terror closing in. "We will not join you." With strength she didn't know she had, she lunged toward the flickering light, yelling, "Lily, grab my hand." As their fingers reached for one another, the shadows spiraled violently around them, the horrifying laughter of the figure rising above the chaos. Would love be enough? Or was this the moment they both disappeared forever? The fate of the sisters hung in the balance, suspended in a breathless heartbeat. And just as Sarah felt Lily's fingertips brush against hers, the darkness roared with renewed fury. Everything went black. In that void, a chilling question echoed through the silence. Would they survive the clutches of the house, or lose themselves to its unforgiving embrace? The blackness swallowed them whole, a void seemingly infinite that muffled the screams and shadows. Sarah felt cold unbearably, so as if all warmth had been stripped away. Her heart beat in a frantic rhythm against the oppressive silence, and dread crept into her bones like ice water. Feeling lost, she clenched her eyes shut against the insidious whispers weaving through the gloom. But within that darkness, a spark of hope ignited. Then, as if the universe had suddenly breathed life back into her, Sarah felt a warmth beside her Lily's presence. The familiar softness, the unmistakable essence of her sister surged into existence, pulling Sarah from the abyss. "Lily," she called, her voice fragile. "Sarah," came the echo from a distance, warm yet laced with urgency. The bond they shared glimmered softly, transcending the darkness, a beacon in a storm. Gathering every ounce of love and strength left within her, Sarah focused on that warmth. Memories flooded back, school dances, whispered secrets, shared dreams. Each memory was a brick in the wall between them and the void. With a fierce determination, she opened her eyes. What she found was profound. She was no longer alone in the dark. The shadows that loomed before her formed chaotic shapes, twisting and turning, but now they felt distant. Light began to filter through like sunrise breaking the night. Something shifted, and for a moment, the darkness began to tremble. "You cannot leave." The figure, its features now revealing furrows of despair rather than malice, screamed in frustration. "You belong to us. Not if we don't want to." Sarah spat back, her heart swelling with defiance. "Lily, take my hand," she shouted, reaching through the dark. The shadows recoiled at Sarah's command as if unsure how to respond. Together, Lily's voice chimed, directing her sister's resolve. Their fingers connected, strong and unyielding, transcending the darkness that sought to claim them. In that instant, a ripple cascaded through the shadows, crackling like thunder. They felt the tendrils tighten, but Sarah and Lily surged forward, hand in hand, united by a bond that no darkness could break. "I'm with you," Sarah breathed, squeezing tight as they moved against the darkness, the chains around Lily dissolving with every step they took. As they pressed onward, the chaotic whirl of horror turned into a mosaic of flickering lights, reflections of the faces of the children who had been lost, each caught in fate's unforgiving grip. Voices swirled around them, now a cascading song of sorrow and hope. "Help us. Save yourselves no more," Sarah cried, her voice ringing fervently through the horrid cries. "We will break this curse. We will free you." She felt the power of her declaration rippling through the shadows, igniting something deep within the essence of the house. The walls writhed as the whispers turned to anguished wails, shadows unraveling before their eyes. "Stay," the figure howled, now a mere flicker of its former self, collapsing under the combined force of love and determination. It shrieked, growing smaller as its grip weakened, shadows retreating like a tide. And thundering forward, the sisters pushed past the remnants of despair. Straining against the weight that had held them for far too long, they sprinted toward a sliver of light shining brightly ahead. With a final surge of energy, Sarah and Lily burst through, wrapped in a brilliant halo of light. It enveloped them, chasing away everything dark that had clouded their existence. In a brilliant flash, They were outside, gasping in the cool night air. The cursed school stood long behind them, a faded silhouette consumed by the light, banished from their reality. As they stood together under a starlit sky, both trembling and alive, a weight lifted from Sarah's heart. "We did it," she whispered, looking at Lily with tears of relief. "Yes, we fought together," Lily replied, smiling, her eyes sparkling with fierce determination. Distant echoes of lost children faded away, replaced by the sounds of the gentle breeze rustling the leaves. Their home was no longer haunted. Instead, their love glowed, illuminating the path ahead. The weight of darkness had been dispersed, allowing joy to flood their hearts once more. A new dawn emerging from the remnants of fear. "Let us go home," Sarah said, wrapping her arms around her sister, vowing never to let the shadows back in. And hand in hand, they stepped forward, ready to rebuild their lives, armed with courage and an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of darkness, but forever illuminated by the light of love. As the darkness receded, they ventured into the new beginning that awaited them, side by side, never to be apart again. Now, before you leave, listen up. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because let us face it, it helps. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I'm dying to know what you think. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Let us spread the word.